Good evening, happy Thursday. Are we live? Are we up and running? Let me check, because I need to see it myself. I don't trust Dave going, yeah, it's live. Here I am, da-dee-da. Oh, nice and colourful today, aren't we? Rainbow blanket. Anyway, hello, thank you for joining me. As you know, we normally do a Tuesday, don't we? And I was going to do the live from our camper in Essex. The only way is Essex on Tuesday night. But decided not to because it meant packing up all the hand sewing bits. And I'd done hand sewing recently, so I wanted to do some machine sewing. So now I've got my Juki back after it's been serviced. It's all nice and shiny and running smoothly. Thread cutter's all working. It's all looking beautiful. So yes, I thought we'd do a bit of machine sewing. So thank you for popping along. Is anybody with us, Dave?
Yes.
So what we're going to do today is use up our scraps, because I, like you probably, or you like me, have got loads and loads of scrap bits of fabric around, which I like having because, you know, we're a bit of collectors, aren't we? I like to think of it as collectors, and that's great, but we want to be able to use it up as well. So I've got a few different bits of fabric, so I'm going to show you, and we're just going to make some scrappy binding. So I also wanted to show you excuse me, this week's star buy is the Riley Blake jelly roll. So you may remember I got these in 3 or 4 weeks ago, and they are beautiful. I'll show you some of them in a bit more detail in a minute. I don't want to take the packaging off because someone will get this, and it's obviously nice and clean. So the range is called Summer Picnic. It is so nice. So you've got all these lovely greens and yellows, blues. It's almost rainbowy. I made the large hexagon quilt from it, the pattern for that. So if you want to see it in a bit more detail, if you go onto our website, look under the shop patterns and kits and look for the large hexi quilts, then you'll see this made up in that large hexi quilts. Now this is some of the fabrics out of it as well that I'm going to show you how to do the scrappy binding. This is normally £29.99, this jelly roll. It is Riley Blake, so it's good quality fabric. And this week it's £24.99. It's our star buy. So you can get one of those for £24.99. So that's a really good deal if you're interested in that. And that's just some of them. And also what I'm going to do tonight is use the offcuts. I'll just pop that there. You can see what I mean by scrap. You all know what obviously scrappy fabric is. I have a problem with calling it scrap because there's no such thing as scrap, is there? Because it's all just so lovely. But you know, for the sake of, we all know what we're talking about, it's scrap. So it bits like this. I just don't want to lose the laptop. These are the offcuts of that, me making that large hexi quilt actually, and I keep everything. So anything that's, I say everything, if it's a piece of fabric that's less than 2.5 inches, so imagine if that was all the way up that width, an inch, I'll tend to throw it out, because I do because I do small hexes. I like, you know, I like my EPP. I will keep as much as I can, because even a small piece of scrap actually covers a hexagon. So as long as I know I can cover a hexagon template with a fabric, I will keep it. So these are the scraps off that. Now these kind of scraps won't be much use for the scrappy binding, certainly not the whole piece, because I like my binding to be at least 1.5 inches, 2 inches, because as you know, and maybe you don't know, you've perhaps not watched before, I like quite a wide binding, because I like it to be the binding to the quilt and on the front, and then I like to fold it round so that on the back it's a feature as well. So this one is just what I would call a fairly standard binding of about 1 inch. It's got a 1/2 inch on the front and 1/2 inch on the back. Now my other quilts, especially the large hexy one, or if you look at the EPP lap quilts, they've got really quite wide binding widths on. So things like this are not going to be wide enough. Kath, hope you enjoyed your trip away and your motorhome. We are at the caravan for a few days. It's a bit grey and wet today. Oh, lovely, Kath. I love it. I absolutely love being in the van. We just call it the van. It's the camper van, but it's only cute and little Susie Suzuki. So nice. And I just switch off, and I'm sure you do, Kath. You just go there, don't you? And I don't know, as soon as we drive, even the drive away from the house on the way there, I just start to switch off. So it was so nice. And even when it's raining, because it rained on Tuesday night, was it, into Wednesday, don't care, because then I can just stay in my dressing gown a bit longer. I like walking over to the shower block in my dressing gown. I proper chill out. So yeah, absolutely love it. So I hope you're having a nice time, Kath. So yeah, even bits like that, look, that's about, what have we got there? 2 inches. So I'll keep as much as I can, because I hate throwing it out. But you can see, what you can see is these are from that summer picnic jelly roll. So you get a bit of an idea. Look at the fabrics in them. You've got the checks, strawberries, a few more checks. I've put some white on white because that's one of my favourite designs. Then you've got some florals, strawberries, checks. It's just lovely. Cherries. So it really is a nice mix. So that gives you a bit of an insight into all the different colours. Some bees as well, look, they're nice. So I've got lots of scraps. Hello, lovely. You look lovely as always. Thank you, Kerry. I'll try my best, darling. I'm a bit hot tonight. It's a bit muggy, isn't it? So I'm a little bit hot because we have to shut all the curtains so it's nice and dark, and I'm like, it's me age. It's me age. No, you're only as young as you feel. No, it's your age, you know. So I've got bits of scraps like this. I've got jelly rolls that I've sewn together from previous projects. I love a jelly roll. I love pre-cuts. I've got jelly roll strips. That's just a white on white jelly roll strip. I'm showing you all my bits of scraps so that you can see what I'm working with to make some nice binding. I've got a genuine bit of scrap fabric from, oh, that was a couple of years ago when I did some of the EPP. I have got squares here. I think these are 13-inch squares that we cut for the cushion kit. We cut a few too many, didn't we, Dave? They're not really scraps, are they? But they go in my scrap bags, but I've kept a few for myself. Lots of bits of jelly rolls here left over, and here in my little basket I've got lots of 2.5-inch squares. So if I have some, oh, there's a hexie in there, look, they pop up everywhere, don't they, them hexes? Yeah, anything that I've got, so when I get round to it, if I've got sort of a couple of hours in an afternoon, which is not very often, but I'll just stand. I find it quite nice and relaxing just to stand and cut my scraps into 2.5-inch squares, because they always come in handy, don't they? So I've got a range of scraps to show you how I'm going to make this binding, because I love the scrappy effect. And if we get time, which we will, I'm also going to show you how to do a scrappy block, a 5-inch block, if we get time, because I just love scraps. And I was talking to my friend at lunchtime. I went out for a bit of lunch today as well. Anyone would think I was on holiday. And she was saying, oh, I like a scrappy block. And I thought, oh yeah, we could do a scrappy block today, just using up all your bits and bobs. So that's the jelly roll. Let me put that out there, up there, so it's out the way. I'm going to move my laptop out the way. So if anyone messages, can you tell me, Dave? Because it's we haven't got an awful lot of room here. Now my bobbin is going to run out in a minute, so you can see me fill the bobbin up. You know, if you're a beginner, that might be useful. Cup of tea that I'd like to have before it goes cold. So yes, the Dukey had a service this week, so it's all singing and dancing and nice and new. It feels a lot better because the thread cutter was not not doing what it needed to do. Apart from that, it was fine, but I've had it 14 months, or yeah, 14, 15 months. So it was just due for a service. I'm trying to get in a position that Dave can see me. Can you see me? Hiding over, and I need to get to my ironing, my board. So I'm going to start, I just haven't got enough room, Dave. I've got enough room. I'm going to start by cutting some strips. So let's make a binding piece of, I'm trying to think, 2 inches. So I'm going to cut all my strips to 2 inches, and because I like it as scrappy as can be, I'm going to cut this triangle piece on the diagonal so that I get all of those 3 pieces in my binding piece. So there's a 2-inch piece.
Jackie loves the quilt.
Oh, thank you, Jackie. That's my rainbow quilt, which needs a pattern writing for it actually. That was that's quite old now, and it's something I haven't actually written a pattern for. So because these are jelly roll strips, they're 2.5 inches normally. Oh, so let's cut that down to 2 inches. I'm just going to put my scrappy bits on the, like more scrappy bits on the floor. So I'm just cutting 2.5 inch strips. 2 inch. Get your brain in gear, Debbie. Come on. 2 inch, 2 inch, 2 inch. Normally when I cut, I stand up, so it seems really strange doing it sitting down, because you kind of have the balance of power, don't you? When you're standing up, it's different to when you're sitting down. So because these are cut sort of on the angle, to change that up a bit, I'm just going to cut straight across on this one. So I'm, to keep my lines, although it's scrappy, it doesn't matter, but I'm just lining up my ruler on the centre strip so I get a straight piece, and then I'm going to cut 2 inches. 2 inch strips. I just find it really nice. I'll keep that one out because that's not waste as such. So there's a few the same. What else? So we've got here just literally a random piece of an offcut. So you can see here, I like to guess what I like to try and remember. I reckon I've made some bias binding off this piece before, look. So I'm going to straighten this off, this edge, because that isn't quite straight, and then measure 2 inches away from that cut edge. And I'm not worried about these ends. I'm not squaring them off too much. I'll do that in a second. I'm just getting the sort of lengths, 2 inch lengths at the moment. If you've got a stripology ruler, of course, you could just line it up and cut all your 2 inch strips. So we've got a few little bits there. Let's have a bit of this one. So I'm going to fold this in half because I've only got a little cutting board here. So try not to waste too much. So get your straight edge there and then cut your 2 inch pieces. I might cut that one in half. Because it's going to be a scrappy binding, I really want it to be quite scrappy. I don't want lots of long pieces of the same fabric. Let's have some 2 inch pieces here. Well, most of these I think are 2 inch or 2.5 inch squares. So let's cut them down to 2 inch. Bit of Tilda rainy days there, look, or windy days. I will call it rainy days. Don't know why. It's not a lot different, I suppose, is it? So these are just 2.5 inch squares. That's my favourite size of square. Just cutting them down to 2 inches because they can be added in. And what we're going to do is make our own piece of binding. Now, I wonder what you do. Do you tend to buy bias binding on the roll? It's nice and easy, isn't it, to do that? I think actually this one is, you know, an off the shelf binding just on a roll. So it's nice and easy, it's already done for you. I tend to nowadays make my own binding because I like it out of the fabric that I've made the quilt from. So for example, this quilt behind me, if I was making this now, I would keep the offcuts because these were from a charm pack, 12 inch square charm packs. So I would keep some of the edge, some of that from that block, and I would use that for the for the binding, because I like it to bring, I think it brings the quilt together when you're using fabrics that are in the quilt to make scrappy binding. So that's why I thought I make it all the time, and just thought, you know, maybe that'd be worth showing you, because you may think, oh, I've never made scrappy binding before, or maybe not even made binding at all.
Kate says great idea to use up our lovely scraps.
Yeah, exactly, because they can just get left, can't they? And it breaks your heart, because again, it depends what you do with them. If you use them for EPP, then they can go quite quickly. I use a lot of scraps, but I've still got loads left, so it's really nice to be able to use them up.
Dawn says hello.
Hello, hello. Hello. Right, I've got a few bits going on there, haven't I? So they're all 2-inch wide strips, so you can see I've got a random number there.
Dawn says off topic, but live your hair, Debbie.
Oh, thank you, Dawn. Do you know, it needs a cut again. It's got long, it feels quite long now. So I'm going to have it cut again next week. Sorry, just let me have my tea. Right, now my bobbin will run out in a second, so that's not a problem. We can do that. So can you see me, Dave? I feel a long way away. Here we go. Let's move across. So there's no order to this. I'm just going to start. I haven't chopped the ends. You could chop the ends off if you feel more comfortable. Let me show you how to do that if you feel more comfortable. Because if you're new to doing this, you may think, oh, I don't want to, because you are sewing it at an angle. So I've got my smaller ruler now, look. So let's square off the ends. So now I'm taking my ruler, using the measurements, the lines on my ruler, and squaring off that shorter end. If they look square, like these ones are, because they're off 2.5-inch blocks, they're fine. But when you get one like this that's really scrappy, then it's better to just line that up with your ruler and chop off that skew whiffy end. There we go. They're okay. That's okay. This is a skew whiffy one. Chop it off. There's a skew whiffy one. Chop that one off as well, because what we're going to do to make the binding is, oh, one's gone overboard, he didn't want to play tonight. To make your binding, you've got all your scrappy bits, I'll cut those in a minute, and we're going to place the fabrics right sides together, and we're going to ignore what's on your fabric, because that could be a bit off-putting when you've got bits and messy bits, all sorts. As long as you've got straight edges, mine's 2.5 inches, and the length is completely random. And what you're going to do is place those ends at a right angle together. So you've got a nice 90-degree angle here. One piece going this way, one piece going the other way, so they lay on top of each other. And then what we're going to do is sew, and you could use a friction pen here. I haven't actually got a friction pen with me, but if you wanted to help, I'm not a pinner, but I'm going to show you as if I am a pinner. If you wanted to line this up exactly, I'm using this, where's my 45-degree angle here on my ruler. So there's my 45-degree angle here, and I'm running that, can you see here, Dave? I'm running that 45-degree angle along that inner edge, and I'm going to draw a line. That's not a friction pen, but it doesn't matter, because I'm going to sew over it, and I'm going to pin there. Okay, so that's my line. Can you see it? It's very faint. And then I'm going to sew along that line, on the line. So let me do that over here, and then I'll come back and show you. So when I've got my machine set, I haven't at the moment set it to a 1/4 inch seam, because I'm sewing on the line, not to the side of the line. And then I'm going to, here we go, it's telling me the bobbin's going to run out. Go across that line. Because I've got used to my thread cutter not working, lot, I've done it manually. It's amazing, isn't it, how quick you get into things. So I've sewn along that 45-degree line, and now I'm going to cut just by eye a 1/4 inch seam, and then when I turn that out so it's right side facing, there is your seam. Now this looks a bit complex because you've got all this scrappiness going on, so let me show you again with just 2 plain pieces of fabric. So that's your plain piece, 2 inches wide, another plain piece of fabric here, 2 inches wide. Place them right sides together on a right angle. So I'm not using my board, I'm just doing it by eye. Then if you want to, you can take your ruler with your 45-degree angle here, going down that edge. You can do it by eye as well. I can see that that's the corner there and that's the corner there, so I can draw that line, and that's my, it's not working, is it, on the fabric? That's my sewing line. There we go. Pin it together, and we're going to sew along that line. Now if you're not sure about this and you're new to it, what you can do is when you pin it there, you can fold that over and pretend that that's already sewn to see what that's going to look like. So once you've sewn across that line, pull it back and you know that that's what it will look like when it's sewn together. So sew again across that line, take your pin out, oh, my automatic thread cutter's working, how nice. And then you're left with, oh look, my bobbins ran out. You see, what I like to do is real time. So if you're new to sewing, and even if you're not new to sewing and you're not sure about a bobbin, do you want to have a look at this, Dave? Can you see? If you just stand up there. So just come across there because you're going to block the light. So the bobbin's there. This is my thread. Take it under that piece here. That's, you would always take your thread under there if you were going to naturally thread your machine. So I'm doing the bobbin, so I'm going to go across here over the top of that. My machine's a bit different, maybe a bit different to yours, but it'll be the same sort of thing. Take it across there and then take your bobbin. I always give it a bit of a wet so that it goes through the hole easily, and pop it on your bobbin winder, and then however yours works. I always hold that thread for a bit and then I'll snip it off so that I know that that bit of thread is wound really in quite tightly in the centre of that bobbin, and then your machine just does that itself. I did see the other day there were you can buy actually bobbin winders. I'll wait till Dave's said. You can buy bobbin winders that are separate from your machine, which might be nice. If it worries you threading your machine back up, then they might be quite useful. I've never used one because I don't actually mind stopping my sewing, winding a bobbin. That's full now, so I can just pop that back in my machine, and that's that, and the bobbin's replaced. And then all you've got to do is just thread your machine back up. So if you're comfortable with threading, I don't think it matters about doing that, but I can see the advantage of having a separate winder. It would be quite nice, I suppose, because you wouldn't have to thread your machine. There we go. So let's sew this one again. So I'm just going to do this by eye this time because I've unpinned it. I'm just going to do it by eye, but I'm basically sewing exactly the same along that line. Hang on a sec. It's not quite lined up, so I've just relined it. And there we go. So that is sewn across that line. If you want to double check that you've done it the right way first, check it. You can just finger crease this, and then you can cut that seam allowance just by eye, 1/4 inch. Let's get rid of some of these long threads where the bobbin ran out. And there you go. So that sort of shows it, I hope, a bit more clearly, because we've got just two simple pieces of fabric. Okay, so I'm just going to carry on doing that. Now you may think, you know, when you've got long bits like this, you kind of think, oh, they're only little, but actually I think it's the detail in having little bits of fabric, especially if you fussy cut them, so it's got, you know, a special, like that's got a little sunflower on it, which I love. I just think it's the detail like that that make your quilt nice, unique. I just think that's what makes it. I really do.
Christine says sorry she's late.
Oh, sorry. Are you all right, Christy? Sorry, I was waiting for Dave to tell me something else then.
And Jackie says I usually work with 2 spools of thread to save having to rethread machines.
Ah, yes, good idea. Yeah, all these little time-saving tips that we've got. Good idea. So take my pen out once I've got it under the foot. So yeah, when you do a little piece like that, like I say, when you look at it, you could always use your ruler, of course, here if you wanted, and your rotary cutter. If you prefer to do that, then you just use your ruler, put the line on the 1/4 inch, the line of sewing 1/4 inch off the edge, and then you can just slice that off and then just finger press it. But I think that's really nice. I like having the little bits. I think that's what makes it really pop. So here's another bit that's already sewn in a scrappy way, and you can see I'm not giving any thought at all to the way I'm placing the fabrics, because I want it to be absolutely scrappy. Okay, draw your line if you feel you'd rather do it that way. Where's my 45 degree? If you'd rather do it that way. Can't see it. There it is. Oh, it's not the right way around. Hang on, my eyes are going funny with the light. There it is. But because you're only doing small pieces, I mean, I can see where that's drawn there. You don't need to really draw that line, especially when you get into a bit of a rhythm with it, because you feel more comfortable and more confident with that 45 degree angle. Now look how cool that looks. I just think that looks really nice. It was only a small piece of fabric, but it's really just adds to it. You imagine if you'd got a quilt with all these bits in. I just think it looks brilliant. Let's have another bit of this. Let's have another little piece, because I just think they look really cool. And if you keep all the offcuts from everything you do in your quilts, then imagine how nice it would all look. And it really does bring your quilt together, because you're using the same colours in your binding that you've used in your quilt. And it's really nice. You can just get into a nice little rhythm. So I'm going to use one of these, and again, because it's the fabric's all already on an angle, I'm just going to square off this end. So you're squaring off the fabric rather than being distracted by the pattern of the fabric underneath. Cut that one off. Line that up. I'm just going to do it by eye now, because I'm in a bit of a flow. Oh, that one's got a bit wonky there, look. Saying I was doing it by eye. Let's just line that up again. That's not lined up too well. I was getting distracted by that line of the fabric. There we go. You can just about see it. So don't be afraid. If you're not happy with the way your line has gone, just redo it. Go over. You don't have to unpick it, because I'm reducing that seam allowance, if you like. Then I don't have to unpick the previous line, because I'm making it more to the left of it. That's better. So it just sits better. So don't be afraid to think, oh, I'll just go a bit more to that side. Where's all my other 2 inch pieces? Here's one. So I'm going to square this one off because the piece that I've just put on, I squared this end off to sew here, and now I'm going to square this one off so that that's nice and square. It just means that when you place them together, your pieces of fabric that you've cut, and you can see I've not ironed these, they're square, so you know that that is an absolute square. So if you are drawing your line across, you know it's 45 degrees, and if you're doing it by eye like I am, again, you can pretty much eyeball it because the other lines around it are square, if that makes sense. So what have you been up to? Is anyone chatting to us, Dave, or is everybody just, they're watching with absolute glee at how they can use up all their fabric scraps? Okay, and you just keep going, and you could keep going and going and going. So what I would do is literally keep going, and then what I do, this is because some afternoons, especially, well, say afternoons, could be any time of day, but if you're in the middle of a project, I don't know how you are, but I can sometimes get a bit bored. So I might be doing something for a couple of hours, and then I think, oh, I'm fed up with doing this. So I'll then stop what I'm doing, put it down, because sometimes you just need a break from it, and then I'll make some scrappy binding, and then I've had a nice kind of maybe hour or even just half an hour doing this. Then if I was in my normal sewing space, I would then press that so that all the seams, I would press it on the reverse so that, oh, I didn't chop one of my seam allowances off there, look. So I would press the reverse first so that all of those seams were facing in the same direction. Doesn't matter which. Now you've got a few odd seams here because I've used these scrappy bits. You know, I've already got bits that are sewn together. So I don't worry too much about seams. Like that one, one's naturally going to the left and one's going to the right. I'd just go with that and sew it how it naturally goes. Sew your seam like that one, look, they're both going that way. I'd maybe move one of those because otherwise you're going to get quite a lot of bulk. So press those out and then turn it over to the right side, press again, and then when you've got, see how quick it grows, and considering that some of those pieces were quite small, then when you've got a long piece or however long it is, I would then just take it over my hand like that, roll it up, and you've got yourself 2 meters, 3 meters, 4 meters, however long it is. Or I will just leave that, I might do an hour of it, and then I'll leave it with all my little bits of scrap, and then next time I feel like doing it, I can just add to it. So then when you do a big quilt, or even if it's not a big quilt, you could use these for placemats or table runners, then you've always got some scrappy binding and it saves you buying it. You could also do this anytime with just plain fabric. So if you wanted a nice pink binding, especially if you wanted it on the bias, so that means you've cut the fabric at a 45-degree angle, so it's giving it some stretch. That's good. That binding is good to go around the edge of cushions or something, especially if you're putting piping in, because it will stretch round because it's been cut on the bias. Then you could just do it in plain colours. Get yourself a piece of fabric, maybe 1 metre, cut the fabric on the bias on a 45-degree angle, so you've got a few strips, and then again just sew them together in exactly the same way, so that I'll show you again on here, or these two little bits of fabric. So you've got one piece of fabric right side facing on the horizontal. So if I use the lines on the mat, you can see, and then your other piece is going to go vertically right sides together facing downwards from that right angle corner. And then if you need to, if you think, oh, that would be helpful, you can take your ruler and you can draw your 45-degree angle. So I'm going from that mark 2 inches, and here 2 inches. I'm not even using the ruler in terms of angles. I don't know if my pen will work, and you'll just make a line across there with your pen. Pin either that side, or you could pin both, and then you're sewing along that actual line. And then once that is sewn, it gives you that perfectly straight piece of fabric. So there's a little whirlwind tour of how to make some scrappy binding. Has anyone got any questions, Dave, while I have a little bit of tea? Because
No.
I feel a bit on my own now.
This said evening all. My coffee's going cold.
Dave's coffee's going cold this week. Shame. So what I'm going to do now, because we've still got a little bit of time, haven't we? I mean, I could sit here all night. I'm going to do a little scrappy block. So I've got a 5-inch ruler here. I love my rulers. I don't have any of these for sale. So I'm not always doing a sales pitch. But I like my little rulers, because you might think, well, why do you need a 5-inch ruler? Because you could just use your ordinary ruler and measure 5 inches and cut it. But I just think they're so nice when you've got the right shape. So that's just something I like. Not a sales pitch at all. So I'm going to put my binding there, because that's finished with for now. And I'm not going to use all these off-cutty bits. I'm not going to use those. I'm just going to use genuine, well, they're all genuine, but you know what I mean, just on their own pieces of fabric to make a 5-inch block, or 2. So they're all different sizes. I'm not cutting these at all at the moment. I'm just going to go with what I've got. Are you ready? Dave's going to have a look at them. Bit of a delay there. So there's all my little bits of fabric. So now I'm just going to randomly, proper random now, I'm over at the machine now, Dave, sew these together to make a 5-inch block, and let's see where it goes. I love having a play with fabric. So let's have a play. So I'm going to place these 2 fabrics right sides together, and I'm just going to sew randomly. I'll do a straight seam to start with. Okay, so I've just done a straight seam there, because I've not got my iron here. Again, I'm just going to finger press. And I'm not going to worry about all these different sizes here, that's a little bit wider, that seam. I'm just going to take the next bit of fabric. It's a little bit like doing a log cabin, if you've done a log cabin, but it's a random way of doing it. So I'm now going to take this fabric, because that's the same, it's more than the length of these 2, if that makes sense. And I'm going to even sew on an angle. So I'm going to place that fabric there, and I'm just going to sew along that seam there. And this again is if you just, especially if you know those days where you've had a bit of an argument with your sewing machine and you think, oh, this isn't going right, and you might have unpicked things, then do this, have a play with your machine, it's great fun. So I've gone across there now, so it's just building. Let's have a little bit of this blue. Sorry, Dave. So let's take a bit of this blue. This is leftover, well, hardly leftovers, but bits of jelly roll strip. So I'm going to now place that there and sew that seam. So you're basically just make it, it's really, really random patchwork. Now this time, because this is a really long piece, because it's the whole of the width of fabric, I am going to cut this off. But you can see I'm not giving much care to it at the moment. I might cut that seam off, because that's just going to be making bulk underneath your patchwork block. So fold that and keep that there. Let's have another piece of jelly roll. I absolutely love jelly rolls, and these are the bits off a jelly roll I used, the picnic blanket one, or was it picnic blanket? Picnic basket, wasn't it? Picnic basket. That was is our star buy. Sorry, Dave, I'm keeping you on your toes tonight, aren't I? My cameraman's good. If you need a good cameraman, I could hire Dave out. Please take him. Shouldn't say that, should I? And you can see how random this is. I'm not using the rotary cutter. I like the scissors when I'm just playing. You can see how this is building, look. And each time I'm just using a bit bigger piece of fabric, but because I don't want it to turn into a log cabin-y type piece, I'm going to make another piece of fabric for here just by sewing these two of these bits together. Bit of calf facet there, look, leftovers. Oh, lovely, what a treat. So I've taken these two pieces and I'm sewing these together.
So what size seam width, or does it not matter?
Doesn't matter, Kath. I'm not even using 1/4 inch at the minute. I'm just going by the side of my foot. But yeah, as long as it's consistent, really. But because it's very random, very scrappy, doesn't matter. So I've made another small piece of fabric there, because every one I use, I want it to be longer or as long as the piece I'm sewing it to, if that makes sense. So I'm going to sew that one there. So yeah, I'm just using the side of my foot, Kath. I haven't reset my machine to 1/4 inch. Just using the side of my foot. Fold your seams out so you can see you're just literally having a play. I absolutely love doing this. It's a long time since I've done it, actually. It's nice. Let's have a bit of this nice little mustardy colour. What I like about doing this is, because you're just playing, if you like, and they're generally scraps, you've got nothing to lose by playing around with the colours, because you're not losing anything. They're bits of scrap, so you can really have a nice play. And you might put colours together that you wouldn't otherwise have put together. Okay, see how quickly it grows as well. So I'll cut that off there. That's gone back into my scrap pile because it's still good. And there we go. So once you've got a piece that you think, oh, we're getting there in terms of size now, I've got my 5-inch block, which the piece of fabric is now bigger than. And again, I'm not going to square up my lines and make it nice and square, and it's going to be a square in shape, but what I mean is, if you're doing a log cabin, you know, the log cabin where it's lines and lines and lines, I would make sure that that line on my ruler is lined up with that seam. No, this is completely plain, completely random, completely freestyle. So I'm going to really mix it up and put my ruler on an angle. Now I've got my rotating mat here, haven't I? Let's see if I can use it properly tonight. You know what I'm like. I have all the tools. May as well use them. I'm not very keen on the rotating mats. Let's see if I can fall in love with it tonight. Because you do need, definitely, to be cutting away from you. I think I scared someone to death the other week on the TV by not having a lot of space. Cutting in the wrong direction. There we go. Let's snip that off with the scissors. Now, any large seam allowances you've got at the back, you can cut them off because it's going to then reduce your bulk. So they're all pretty much 1/4 inch seams. And there is my 5-inch block. So imagine if I press that with my iron. Just a lovely little, like, crumbs of fabric that are a 5-inch block. So I'm going to make another one of those. Have we got time, Dave? No, probably not, have we? I don't want to keep people. So that is very, very simple. So we've got Scrappy-Binding, which is lovely, and you can make as much and as little as you need, and just keep adding to it. As you get new scraps, you can add to it. And we've got a scrappy 5-inch block, but of course you could do those in any size. You could use the smallest pieces of scrap. You could also, you know, applique shapes onto it, anything you like really, to just to make your own fabric, because that's what we're doing, isn't it? When you're doing anything patchworky or with scraps, you're making your own binding and you're making your own fabric. But imagine if you made something like 20 or 24 of those, then you could very easily start to make your own quilts by using those as, can you see that, Dave? As a mini block. So they're your mini blocks that you could then build quite easily, or you could make 4 of those, sew them together, make the front of a tote bag or a makeup bag. They're lovely, aren't they? Just lovely little patchworky squares. So have we got any comments before we sign off, Dave? No, I hope you're all still with me. So star by this week is the jelly roll, so please have a look at that, and then you can always use that for nice big projects, or you could go a little bit crazy and random and use some of them like I have today to make your scrappy block or your scrappy binding. And please, as always, send me some photos so I can see what you've been doing. Back to oh, go on.
Leslie says thanks, Debbie.
Oh, you're welcome, Leslie. Thank you. And thank you for joining me. It really does mean a lot. So thank you for popping along to be with us on Thursday. Next week, back to normal on Tuesday at 6:30. Thank you for popping along with me tonight on a Thursday for a change. Have a lovely weekend. We don't normally say that, do we? Because Tuesday seems a long way off from the weekend, but it's only Friday tomorrow.
Kath says thanks, Debbie. Great ideas for using scraps.
Thank you.
Kirsty says saw last few mins. Lovely block. Does your Juki cut the thread automatically?
It does. It does cut the thread automatically, which is so nice. That hasn't been working for a while. I've really missed it. Yeah, so it does. It chops the threads off. What I like about that, the best thing is, it just saves all them threads, because they, you know, I was doing a big quilt the other week, you know, the large hexy one, and yeah, just lots of wasted threads. I couldn't believe it, because I've got so used to using this with the automatic thread cutter.
Kirsty's jealous. She wants one of those.
I mean, I could say don't be jealous, but it is really nice. It is a really nice machine. Yeah, it does the job for you. And when you sew as much as I do, and as you do, I imagine, it's nice to have a machine that does bits and bobs for you, isn't it? Any more for any more? Any more for any more? No? So thank you very much for joining me. Keep an eye on the website, because as you know, there's lots of things coming up and popping up on there. And I will see you. I'll pop along online over the weekend with various bits and bobs. I'm bringing some exciting projects next week. I'm so excited. Next Friday to Sewing Street. Yeah, 3 new projects. So look out for that. That's on Friday next week.
Thursday.
And Yarn Lane on Thursday, I think. That's not been confirmed. I think I'm on Yarn Lane next week, so keep an eye out for that as well. And I will see you on Tuesday live here.
Jackie says thanks.
Thank you, Jackie. Thank you to everyone who's joined me. It really does mean a lot to me. And I will see you next Tuesday at 6:30 Facebook for live. Bye bye.